I never believed silence could roar until the night my husband stopped speaking to me. The mansion was too still, too polished, too clean for the kind of truth that was about to tear through it. The night wind pressed against the tall glass windows as if it wanted to witness everything. And I was sitting on the edge of our bedroom couch, hands trembling, while the world I'd carefully constructed began to peel apart in slow, merciless layers. My husband, Adrian Vasiliev, the man everyone whispered about in shaded tones, yet greeted with reverence, stood in front of me with a stillness so calm it made danger feel elegant. His fitted black suit reflected the dim amber lights above him, casting sharp edges along his jawline. He wasn't yelling. Adrian never raised his voice. He didn't need to. He simply held the folded envelope in his hand, the results that detonated the life we had built together. And he looked at me with those bead-type eyes, cool, unreadable, but carrying storms behind their restraint. "Tell me," he said quietly, "why my sons aren't mine." Before I could breathe, before I could decide whether the truth or a lie would save me, a question crashed into my mind, one I suddenly wished someone would ask me. If the person you fear the most is also the one you love the most, what do you do when both parts of them stand in front of you at the same time? And maybe that's the question you'd answer too, because right now, if you were in my place, what would you have said to him? I swallowed, my throat burning. "Adrian, I can explain." "Then explain," he said, stepping closer. No anger in the tone. That was what made it worse. He placed the envelope on the table between us, as though putting down a weapon he didn't want to touch. The air seemed to shift, colder, heavier, unbearably slow. He sat across from me, leaning back slightly, a gesture of deceptive calm. He crossed one leg over the other, his fingers brushing lightly against the watch on his wrist. That subtle movement carried more tension than a shout ever could. Adrian Vasiliev, billionaire, gentleman, my husband, and the man whose shadow carried enough influence to silence entire rooms. The kind of man who never needed to say who he was. People already knew. I stared at him, feeling the weight of everything I'd never intended to happen. I closed my eyes for 1 second, just one, trying to gather the courage to speak. But the memories began to rise. Memories I'd buried. Memories that weren't sins, but mistakes. Mistakes with consequences I never foresaw. "It wasn't what you think," I whispered. He raised an eyebrow, the slightest tilt, controlled, elegant, dangerous in its quietness. "Really?" Because the results paint a very specific picture. I closed my eyes for 1 second, just one, trying to gather the courage to speak, but the memories began to rise. Memories I'd buried. Memories that weren't sins, but mistakes. Mistakes with consequences I never foresaw. "It happened before you and I were married, before you came into my life. Adrian, I swear on everything I am, this isn't betrayal. It's a truth I didn't know how to escape." His jaw clenched once, barely, but it was enough to slice through me. "Your driver," he muttered, as if testing the taste of the word. I stared at him, feeling the weight of everything I'd never intended to happen. "He wasn't my driver back then," I said quickly. "He was just a friend who helped me survive when my life was falling apart. Adrian, please try to understand." "Understand," Adrian cut in, though his voice never rose, "that the children I've raised, protected, given my name, are not my blood." Something in his tone, soft, steady, felt far more dangerous than rage. I forced myself to meet his eyes. "You love them, you know you do, and they love you." His expression flickered. barely visible, but I'd spent enough nights memorizing this man to catch it. Adrian loved them deeply, perhaps more honestly than he loved anyone. They were the only ones who allowed him to see him without his armor, the only ones who could make him smile without restraint. And now he felt betrayed by fate, by circumstance, by me. He leaned forward slightly. When were you planning to tell me? I didn't know how. I didn't even know for sure until these results came. You were the one who insisted on testing when the doctors mentioned the blood type mismatch. Oh, I insisted, he repeated, voice carrying the weight of unsaid things. Right. The silence that followed wrapped around us like smoke. My heartbeat wasn't racing, it was stumbling, collapsing into itself. Adrian, please, I whispered. I never meant to lie. I was afraid. Afraid of losing you. Afraid of losing the family we built. I didn't know what to do. He didn't answer. He stood up slowly, fixing the cuff of his sleeve. A small, controlled action, a sign that he was holding himself together by a thread. Adrian, please, I whispered. I never meant to lie. I was afraid. Afraid of losing you. Afraid of losing the family we built. I didn't know what to do. He didn't answer. He stood up slowly, fixing the cuff of his sleeve. A small, controlled action, a sign that he was holding himself together by a thread. Where are you going? I asked, voice cracking. To look him in the eye and decide what kind of future this family has left. And then the door closed behind him with a softness that felt like the loudest ending I'd ever heard. The door closed with a quiet finality that made the entire room feel abandoned. I stood frozen where he left me, listening to the silence he carried behind him. Adrian never slammed doors. His anger was a colder thing, quiet, elegant, deliberate. But that soft click told me everything I needed to know. He wasn't just hurt. He was unraveling. And the worst part was that I couldn't follow him. I couldn't run down the hall like in those dramatic movies where the wife clings to her husband's arm and begs him not to leave. Not with Adrian. Interrupting him when his composure was thinning was like stepping too close to the edge of thin ice. You didn't notice the cracks until it was too late. I sat back down slowly, palms pressed to my eyes as a trembling breath left me. I wanted to cry, but tears felt useless, almost disrespectful to the weight of what was happening. Crying didn't solve anything. Not now. The envelope still sat on the table, like a verdict. The truth was supposed to set you free? Wasn't that what people always said? But in my case, the truth tied me to a chair, lit a match, and waited for the flames to crawl up my skin. I reached for the envelope with shaking fingertips. Just touching it felt like touching something radioactive. Inside, the truth that accidentally destroyed everything. I whispered under my breath, "Why now? Why this way?" But the universe didn't answer. It rarely does when you need it the most. I stood up and walked toward the window. Adrian was already outside, crossing the courtyard with his long, purposeful steps. Even from this distance, I could recognize the tension in his shoulders, the way he adjusted his jacket, the slow inhale he took before getting into the car. He wasn't rushing. When Adrian was calm, he was dangerous. But when he was this calm, he was wounded. And a wounded man like him was unpredictable, not because he would do something reckless, but because he would do something calculated in a moment where calculation required a colder heart than usual. The engine started. Then the car rolled through the gate and disappeared down the long driveway. I didn't realize I had been holding my breath until the taillights vanished.
Only then did I stumble backward, leaning against the glass, feeling my own pulse pounding too quickly, too unevenly. Daniel. The name felt heavy in my mind. A man who had been kind to me at a time in my life where kindness came in small, brittle rations. A man who never knew he had shaped something so much bigger than either of us. He didn't know. He really didn't know. And now Adrian, the last person I would have ever wanted to face him with this truth, was going straight to him. Not to punish him, Adrian wasn't impulsive like that. He wanted understanding, clarity, control. But what would Daniel say? Would he deny the past? Would he panic? Would he try to protect me or himself? I pressed a hand over my chest, trying to still the wild rhythm beneath my ribs. I couldn't sit here and wait. I couldn't pretend everything would resolve itself like a bad dream. So I grabbed my coat and hurried through the halls. The mansion was dim, most of the staff already retreating into their quarters for the night, unaware of the storm gathering outside. I passed the boys' room, the soft glow of their nightlight spilling into the hallway. My throat tightened. I stood there for a moment, listening to their gentle breathing. Innocent, unaware, loved. Their laughter, their cries, their little footsteps echoing down the corridors, those things belonged to Adrian as much as they belonged to me. Blood didn't define fatherhood. Love did. And he loved them. That was what frightened me most. Adrian was not the kind of man who fell easily, but once he attached, he held on with a quiet intensity that didn't break. It simply burned. I forced myself to step away from their door and continued toward the garage. The staff car was still there. Good. I grabbed the keys from the wall and got in, my hands barely steady enough to start the engine. As the doors lifted, I caught sight of myself in the rearview mirror. Eyes wide, breath uneven, fear clinging to my expression. But beneath that fear was something else. Determination. Weak, but present. I had to reach them before anything went wrong, before words turned sharp, before truths turned into weapons, before love turned into something unrecognizable. The night air rushed around the car as I sped down the long driveway. The sharp scent of the cold wind burned through my lungs, but it woke me up. I needed that clarity. I needed something to ground me. The city lights blurred in the distance. Where would Adrian go? He never confronted people in chaotic spaces. He liked rooms where voices couldn't echo, where silence pressed against the truth until it revealed itself. Daniel lived in a small staff house behind the west wing of the estate. Not fancy, not polished, practical, simple, humble. A place Adrian rarely stepped foot in. So why did I suddenly feel like that was exactly where he was headed? I turned back toward the private road that curved around the mansion grounds, and as I approached, I saw it. Adrian's car, parked neatly in the shadows near Daniel's porch light. My heart nearly climbed out of my chest. I parked a few meters away, close enough to see them, but far enough that neither had noticed me. Daniel stepped outside as Adrian approached him. For a moment, neither spoke. Daniel looked confused, adjusting his shirt nervously as he realized who stood at his door. "Sir? Is everything okay? Do you need something?" Adrian's posture was perfect. Straight, elegant, shoulders strong but controlled. His hands were in his pockets, a stance that looked relaxed but was anything but. "I need answers," Adrian said calmly. Daniel blinked, confused. "About what?" Adrian stared at him for a long moment, his eyes unreadable. "You and my wife." Daniel froze. Sir. I don't understand. You do. Adrian's tone didn't rise, but the firmness in it cut through the night air. You know exactly what I'm referring to. Daniel's brows furrowed. We were friends. That's all. I swear. One night, Adrian added quietly. Daniel's face changed, slightly. A subtle shift of guilt, of regret, of memory resurfacing. My breath caught. Adrian didn't move, didn't blink. Tell me what happened that night. Daniel swallowed hard. It was years ago, sir. Long before she met you. She was going through something. She needed support. I never meant for anything to happen. It was a mistake, but it was never repeated. Adrian studied him. Not with hatred. With calculation. With ache buried beneath steel. Daniel continued, voice trembling. If I wronged you, I'm sorry, truly, but I never knew anything beyond that. If I had, I would have stepped away. I never wanted to ruin anything. For a moment, the night held its breath. Then Adrian said, quiet, steady, devastating. Whether you meant it or not, you did. Daniel lowered his head, guilt etched into every line of his expression. Adrian turned away from him, and that's when he saw me. His eyes met mine across the dim courtyard, and the look he gave me wasn't anger. It was something worse. Disappointment wrapped in exhaustion. Pain held behind discipline. A man breaking in silence. He took one step toward me, then another. The cold wind rustled his coat, and when he reached me, he spoke with the calm tone of a man who had already made a decision he didn't want to make. We're going home. You and I need to finish this alone.
The drive back to the mansion felt like sitting inside a storm that refused to thunder. The rain hadn't started yet, but the tension inside the car carried the same electric heaviness. Waiting, swelling, anticipating something inevitable. Adrian didn't speak. He drove the way he did everything. Controlled, steady, not a single wasted movement. His hands rested lightly on the wheel, but the slight flex of his fingers told me his mind wasn't nearly as calm as his posture pretended. The dashboard lights cast cool shadows across his face, highlighting the sharp lines of his jaw, the restrained focus in his eyes, the heaviness behind them. I could feel his thoughts swirling like cold currents beneath the still surface. I wanted to speak. I wanted to fill the silence with explanations, apologies, anything. But something inside me knew that interrupting his silence now would be like touching a wound before it stopped bleeding. So I waited, and listened, and breathed through the ache building in my chest. When we finally pulled into the driveway, the mansion stood still, its tall windows glowing softly against the night, like eyes watching us return with truths we were never meant to carry. Adrian turned off the engine, but he didn't get out immediately. He sat there, staring at the windshield, his reflection faint in the glass. After a long moment, he said quietly, "You should have told me." It wasn't anger. It wasn't accusation. It was something deeper, something that made my voice shake when I answered. "I know. You trusted a stranger."
but not your own husband. Why? Because I was afraid of losing you. He let out a slow, pained laugh, low and almost disbelieving. You lost me tonight because you didn't trust me yesterday. The words hit harder than any raised voice could have. I didn't mean for any of this to grow this big, I whispered. He finally turned his head to look at me. His eyes were calm. Too calm. He said, "That's the thing about truth. It doesn't grow. It just waits. And sooner or later, someone opens the door it's been hiding behind." He opened his car door then, stepping out with his usual graceful precision. I followed. The cold night wind brushed against us as we walked inside. The soft golden lights of the hallway felt almost mocking, as if the mansion didn't realize everything inside it was breaking. When we reached the living room, Adrian shrugged off his coat and placed it neatly on the arm of the couch. Even now, he moved with the same effortless elegance, the kind that made him respected everywhere, feared nowhere, and obeyed without question. But tonight, the elegance carried something fractured beneath it. He sat down, motioning for me to sit across from him. Not beside him, across. A distance symbolic enough to hurt. I lowered myself into the seat, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. He leaned back slightly, elbows on the armrests, fingers steepled near his mouth, like he was holding himself together with that single pose. He said, "Tell me everything. Not pieces. Not half-truths. All of it." So I did. I told him about the night years ago, how I had been vulnerable, alone, overwhelmed with fear about my future. How Daniel had been the only person offering comfort when everything else was falling apart. How a single moment of weakness turned into consequences neither of us ever expected. I told him how I found out I was pregnant, how I planned to raise the baby alone, how meeting him, Adrian, shifted my world so quickly I didn't even know where to place the truth anymore. "I was going to tell you," I whispered at one point. "Every day I told myself I would, but you came into my life like this force, strong, certain, protective, and I didn't want to lose that. I didn't want to lose you." He listened without interrupting. No sighs, no shaking of his head, no visible signs of anger, just that calm, unreadable expression that was somehow more painful than fury. When I finished speaking, tears were already burning down my cheeks. "I'm sorry, Adrian. I'm so sorry." He exhaled slowly, and then he spoke. "I never asked you for perfection," he said quietly. "I never asked you for a flawless past or complete honesty every minute. I am not naive. I know people carry scars." His voice softened, but the weight of it grew heavier. "All I ever needed from you was trust. Just trust." My breath trembled. "I do trust you." "You trust my strength," he corrected. "You trust my capability, my stability, my influence, but you don't trust my heart." I squeezed my eyes shut, a quiet sob escaping. "That's not true." "It is," he said gently. "You thought the truth would make me leave. You thought I was incapable of staying if things weren't clean and perfect." He leaned forward slightly. "And that isn't love. That's fear disguised as love." His words sliced through me. I had no defense, no comeback, no escape. "A relationship doesn't fall apart because of a past mistake," he said quietly. "It falls apart when one person decides to hide the truth, to protect themselves instead of protecting the relationship. I looked up at him, tears blurring my vision. "Do you hate me?" "No," he said immediately. The quickness of his answer startled me. "I don't hate you," he repeated. "That's not the problem." "Then what is?" He looked down at his hands, the slightest tremor in his fingers, the only crack in his composure. "I don't know how to believe you anymore." The words felt like a scar forming in real time. He stood then, walking towards the fireplace. The flames crackled softly, casting warm light across his silhouette. He placed a hand on the mantel, leaning slightly forward as if trying to catch his breath. "For years," he said quietly, "I built a life around you. Around us. And tonight I discovered that the foundation of that life wasn't solid. It was something you were hoping wouldn't collapse if no one looked too closely." I wiped my face, my voice barely audible. "Do you want to leave me?" He turned his head just enough to meet my eyes. "No," he said softly. "But I need to know if the woman I married is still sitting in front of me, or if she disappeared the moment I opened that envelope." I opened my mouth to speak, but his phone rang, a sharp, unexpected sound slicing through the heavy silence. He glanced at the screen. His expression changed. Confusion, then concern, then something colder. He picked up the call. "Speak." A pause. His eyes sharpened. "When?" Another pause. Then quietly, "I'm on my way." He hung up. My heart dropped. "Adrian, what happened?" He looked at me with a seriousness that made my stomach tighten. "Something is wrong." "What do you mean?" He grabbed his coat and stepped toward me. "Daniel is missing," he said. My blood ran cold. "And someone left a message on his door," Adrian added, voice low, controlled, and edged with danger. A message addressed to me.
The air around us seemed to collapse into a colder shape the moment those words left Adrian's mouth. "Daniel? Missing? A message left for Adrian?" My lungs froze mid-breath. What kind of message? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he slipped into his coat with a deliberate precision that said more than words ever could. His movements weren't rushed. They were focused, controlled. But beneath that control, something restless stirred. Danger wrapped in a gentleman's posture. He finally met my eyes. "You'll see it yourself." A chill rippled down my spine. We stepped out of the mansion together, the night colder than it had been an hour ago. The wind carried the scent of rain, heavy and metallic, as if the sky itself sensed something had shifted. The path to the staff quarters felt impossibly long. The lights along the walkway flickered in slow rhythms, casting shadows that stretched and folded around Adrian as he walked ahead of me. He didn't speak. His silence wasn't the same as before. This one carried alertness, distance sharpened into vigilance. When we reached Daniel's door, I saw it immediately. A single sheet of paper, pinned with something sharp enough to pierce wood. Adrian reached for it, removing the pin with 2 fingers. A long nail. Not a household nail. A message in itself. He unfolded the paper. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. "What does it say?" I whispered. He read quietly, but I could see the shift in his face, the tightening of his jaw, the subtle furrow of his brow, the coldness sliding into his eyes like a shadow. Then he handed the paper to me. I swallowed and read. Every truth has a price. You took what wasn't yours. Now you'll pay what you owe. V. My blood chilled. Adrian, who is V? He exhaled slowly, his expression unreadable. Someone who should have been a ghost by now. I blinked. What does that mean? He looked out into the dark courtyard, scanning the shadows as though expecting someone to step out from them. His voice was low, measured, almost too calm. There was a time, long before you, long before all of this, when I had to sever ties with certain people. Unstable men, men who believed loyalty was a currency that could be forced. He paused. Victor was one of them. He didn't take rejection well. The name hung between us like a crack in the night. You think he took Daniel? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he crouched near the doorway, fingertips brushing the ground. I stared, confused, until he lifted his hand, showing a smear of fine dust. Tire tracks, he murmured. Fresh. My heart flipped painfully. Adrian, what does he want with Daniel? He doesn't even know him. He doesn't need to know him. He just needs leverage. A shiver ran through me. Leverage, I repeated. He looked at me then, eyes steady, piercing, and impossibly calm. You and the children. The words sank into my stomach like stones. I took a step back, breath trembling. Adrian, I didn't mean to pull you into something dangerous. I didn't know. He stood and closed the distance between us in 2 strides. Stop, he said softly. His tone, calm, firm, steady, held a different kind of intensity now. Protective. Anchoring. You didn't cause this. His jaw tightened. I did. What? How? His eyes softened. Barely, but enough for me to feel it. Because I've spent years keeping my past from touching you, and tonight it found its way to your door anyway. My breath shook. What are we going to do? Adrian took a long, controlled breath and placed a hand gently at the center of my back, guiding me away from the house. First, he said, we get you and the boys inside. Safe, locked in. And then? He hesitated for the briefest second. Then, he said quietly, I find Daniel, and I stop Victor from escalating. I felt faint, the ground subtly tilting beneath me. Don't go alone. Adrian, please. He stopped walking, turned to me, and cupped my cheek with a gentleness that hurt more than harshness ever could. I know you're scared, he said softly. You should be, but not of me. Not anymore. A tear slipped down my cheek. He wiped it away with his thumb. You've spent the whole night afraid to lose me, but right now I need you to be afraid of losing something else. Yourself. The boys need you steady, clear, safe. Can you be that? I nodded, swallowing hard. Yes. He leaned in, resting his forehead against mine in a gesture that felt both intimate and painfully distant.
Good, he whispered. When we reached the mansion steps, something unexpected happened. A small voice broke through the quiet. "Mom?" I turned sharply. Our older son stood at the top of the stairs, rubbing his eyes sleepily. My heart nearly broke. Adrian's posture shifted instantly, subtle but unmistakable. His shoulders softened, his gaze gentled. "Hey," he said, climbing the steps. "It's late, champ. Why are you awake?" "I heard voices," our son mumbled. "Are you and Mom fighting?" The innocence in his tone made my chest tighten painfully. Adrian crouched, placing a steadying hand on our son's shoulder. "We're talking," he said calmly. "Not fighting." "Are you mad at him?" our son asked him. He paused, then said something I didn't expect. "I'm not mad at you, and I'm not going to be far away. I just have something important to take care of, all right? Will you be home before it is morning?"
I didn't know what was worse, the sound of my own heartbeat hammering in my ears, or the silence coming from him. The silence always scared me more. Adrian wasn't a man who raised his voice. He didn't need to. The quiet was where his power lived. He stood by the window now, back turned to me, hands in his pockets, looking out at the dark city like he was searching for answers in the lights. Or maybe he was preparing himself for a truth neither of us was brave enough to name first. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm. Too calm. "So you're saying you never suspected anything?" It wasn't a question. It was a diagnosis, a test, a blade disguised as a whisper. I swallowed. I didn't want to suspect anything. He nodded once, a slow, thoughtful motion. Convenience is a seductive thing. I closed my eyes. That hurt more than yelling ever could. He turned then, not fully, just enough that I could see the side of his face, the edge of that unreadable gaze he wore like armor. "You know what I can't understand, Elena?" My name on his tongue made my chest tighten. "I can't understand," he continued softly, "how a man I trusted with my car, with my home, with my children, found the courage, or the stupidity, to betray me in the one place I never expected." I pressed my hands together. He didn't. "Don't," he said simply, cutting through the room like a low thunder. "Don't defend him. Not tonight." I bit my lip. He noticed. He always noticed. "I'm not defending him," I whispered. "I'm trying to explain." "You can explain when I'm ready to listen." He looked directly at me now, eyes sharp, but weighted with something darker than anger. "And I'm not ready." He moved toward the bar, poured himself a drink, paused, then set the glass down untouched. His restraint was terrifying, controlled, precise, like every emotion was tied behind a locked door. "Where are the kids?" I asked quietly. "They're with my sister. They are safe." The word safe felt loaded. Maybe everything he said from now on would feel like a warning. He leaned against the bar, fingers tapping once, twice, as if measuring each moment. I didn't sleep last night. I could believe that. His eyes had a darkness beneath them, not exhaustion, but betrayal. He kept trying to tell myself this was a mistake, some medical error, a lab mistake, anything. His voice thickened, barely noticeable to anyone else, but to me, it was everything. Do you know how many times I almost convinced myself? My throat closed. "Adrian." But every time, I remembered one thing. He looked at me with a startling, quiet intensity. I remembered the way he always looked at them. My breath caught. He looked at our children, he said, stepping closer, as if he were his own, as if he had some stake, some claim, and I told myself he was just fond of them, loyal, dedicated. He stopped a foot away from me. But now I'm asking myself, he whispered, was I blind? Or was I in denial? The question hit me hard because I didn't have an answer that wouldn't break us more. He studied me for a long, heavy moment. Did you love him? My chest caved inward. No. Did he love you? I hesitated. Wrong move. His jaw flexed barely, but enough for me to feel the room tighten. He had feelings, I admitted, but I didn't encourage anything. And yet 2 children exist. Children I raised. Children who call me their father. The way he said father sounded like a wound, not anger, not blame, just a deep fracture spreading through him. Tell me why, Elena. Tell me how I'm supposed to carry that. I stepped forward, voice shaking. Because you're still their father. You're the only father they know, the only one they love. And what about me? What do I know? What do I love? What do I stand on now? His voice cracked there, just a little. A tiny human fracture in the steel. I reached out, almost without thinking, but he stepped back. That hurt more than anything else had tonight. Adrian, I whispered. What are you going to do? He didn't answer right away. He walked to the table, picked up the envelope with the DNA report, flipping it open and closed like a restless heartbeat. What I do next, he said, finally, depends on something I haven't decided yet. Which is... He looked at me with a cold, deep clarity. Whether this was just a betrayal, or whether it was a choice. My breath trembled. It wasn't a choice, I swear. He didn't move, didn't blink, didn't soften. Then help me understand, he said quietly. Tell me the truth you've been holding on to. I froze. He saw it immediately. You're hiding something. Not accusing. Certain. And I'm giving you 1 chance. 1. I felt my pulse race violently. It hurt. Because he was right. I was hiding something. Something I had buried so deep that even I pretended it wasn't there. I didn't cheat on you, I whispered. He didn't react. But, my voice faltered, something happened. Something you never knew. Something I was afraid to tell you because I thought it would destroy everything. His gaze sharpened, not angry, alert, focused, like a man bracing for an impact. What happened? He asked softly. I opened my mouth, but before I could speak there was a sudden sound outside. The sharp thud of a door closing, heavy footsteps, rushed voices. Adrian's head snapped toward the entrance. He didn't like interruptions in moments like this, not unless they were urgent. A knock followed. 3 quick taps. His eyes narrowed. Stay here. My heart lurched as he walked out, calm but dangerous, opening the door just enough to speak with whoever was outside. I couldn't hear every word, but I caught fragments. Antonio is not at the apartment. Car abandoned on 3rd. Someone saw him with a suitcase. My blood froze. They were talking about Daniel, the driver. Adrian stepped back inside, closing the door behind him with a quiet click. His expression had changed, no longer wounded, but sharpened, focused, like a man for a toothache. He's running, Adrian said. A chill ran through me. Why would he run, unless he's hiding something? I swallowed. He's scared.
Adrian stepped closer, voice low. So am I. He looked straight into my eyes. Now, he said, finish what you were going to tell me. I exhaled shakily, bracing myself because this truth, the one I had buried, was about to change everything. And for the first time tonight, even I wasn't sure if our marriage would survive it.
My fingers trembled slightly as I wiped my palms against my dress. Adrian waited, his eyes locked onto mine, patient but unyielding, like a man watching the last seconds of a fuse burn down. He wasn't breathing loudly. He wasn't pacing. He simply stood there, still and steady. The kind of stillness that meant his mind was moving faster than either of us could keep up with. "Say it," he whispered. "Whatever you've been hiding, whatever you've carried alone, say it now." I swallowed hard. "Adrian, before we got married, there was something that happened, something you never knew because I never knew how to tell you without breaking us." His jaw tightened, but he didn't interrupt. "You remember when I suddenly disappeared for 2 months?" I asked. He nodded, slow and cautious. "You said your aunt was sick. You said it was a family emergency." "It wasn't," I said, barely breathing the words. I lied. A shadow crossed his expression, not anger, but disappointment. And somehow that cut deeper. I forced myself to continue. "I left because I wasn't well. I was overwhelmed, confused, and everything in my life was falling apart. And in that moment of confusion, I trusted the wrong person." His eyes narrowed slightly. He didn't speak. "I met someone," I whispered. "Not in the way you think, not romantically. I was vulnerable, emotionally raw, and someone stepped into that space, someone who saw that weakness." He was motionless, listening. "The man who helped me through that time was Daniel." Silence. Heavy. Unforgiving. Adrian's eyes didn't move from my face, but something inside them shifted, just barely. A flicker. A realization. "So you knew him before I hired him," he said quietly. "Yes. I knew him before you ever met him." His voice lowered to a deep, quiet note. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't think he'd ever enter our lives again. When you hired him, I nearly fainted. I thought it was punishment, or fate, or something I'd have to survive." "And you didn't tell me then?" Adrian asked. I shook my head. Tears burned behind my eyes. "I was afraid you'd think I brought him into our home intentionally, that I wanted him there. I didn't. I swear I didn't." Adrian exhaled slowly. Too slowly. "And what exactly happened between you and Daniel back then?" His voice was steady, but I could hear the strain beneath it, like wire pulled too tight. I held my breath, every muscle in my body tense. "Nothing romantic happened. But," he pressed, "but he was the only person I confided in during that time, and he mistook that for something else." I swallowed. "He tried to get closer. I pushed him away. I left the city because I didn't want him confusing my brokenness with affection." His jaw relaxed by a millimeter. Just one. Enough to know he believed at least part of what I said. "And the children?" he asked. My chest tightened. "The timing doesn't make sense, Adrian. I wasn't with him. I wasn't with anyone. Whatever the DNA says, it doesn't reflect the truth of what I lived." He stared at me for a long time, a painfully long time. Then he whispered, "So, somebody is lying." I felt a cold wave wash over me. "You think Daniel manipulated something?" Adrian didn't answer immediately.
I think a man who runs before a confrontation is not an innocent man. I looked away. But what would he gain? That, Adrian said, is what I intend to find out. He walked past me then, slow, intentional, controlled. I turned to watch him as he picked up his phone, dialed someone, and lifted it to his ear. It's me. I want you to pull everything on Daniel, records, contacts, addresses, calls, all of it, and find out where he is right now. A pause. Quietly. He ended the call. I felt a tremor of dread slip down my spine. He returned to me, his voice lower now. I'm not accusing you. I'm not condemning you, but I need the truth. And if he manipulated something, if he created this chaos, I need to know why. I nodded, but unease twisted in my chest. What are you thinking? I asked softly. He hesitated for the first time tonight. That this wasn't about you, or even the children. My pulse spiked. Then what? He stepped closer, lowering his voice as if the walls might be listening. I'm thinking, someone is trying to weaken me. And if they can't get to me through business, they'll come through family. My lips parted. You think someone set you up? Not someone, but multiple. But Daniel might just be the easiest piece to move on the board. I felt a chill crawl across my spine. You think he's working for someone? Someone who wants to hurt you? His silence confirmed it. Adrian, what if the children were never supposed to be part of the plan? He looked at me with a quiet, haunted intensity. They weren't. Suddenly, the door to the office burst open. Not violently, but urgently, one of his men stepping inside with a pale, tight expression. Sir, he said low, we found his suitcase. Adrian's entire body sharpened. Where? He asked. He swallowed. At the docks. I felt my breath catch. Adrian's eyes darkened, not with rage, but with calculation. And him? He asked. His voice dipped to the soft, dangerous tone that made every muscle in the room freeze. Sir, the man looked down. There's something else. Adrian didn't blink. Say it. The man lifted a small object. A phone. A cracked one. Daniel's phone. We found this inside the suitcase. And a note. Adrian extended a hand. The man stepped forward and gave him a folded slip of paper. Adrian opened it slowly. His expression didn't change. He handed it to me. I unfolded it with trembling fingers. The note was short. Just 3 words. It wasn't me. My hands shook, the paper trembling. Adrian took a step back, mind spinning behind his controlled eyes. He didn't run because he was guilty. He ran because someone wanted him gone. He looked up at me, something fierce and protective creeping into his gaze. Elena, he whispered, this is bigger than betrayal. I swallowed. Then what is it? He stepped closer, taking the note from my hand. This, he said softly, is a warning. The words hung between us like a storm ready to break. And for the first time since the night began, I realized we were not just fighting for our marriage. We were fighting for our lives.
For a moment, the room felt colder than it should. The kind of cold that didn't come from air or temperature, but from realization, from danger settling into the bones quietly, without permission. Adrian held the note between his fingers, rotating it slightly, as if the angle of the handwriting might reveal something more. His eyes were distant, calculating, connecting dots only he could see. His stillness was no longer emotional restraint. It was assessment, strategy, preparation. "It wasn't me," he repeated softly. "He wanted us to see this." I crossed my arms around myself, trying to steady my breath. Why would someone frame him? Why Daniel? Adrian lowered the paper. Because he was easy to manipulate. Because he already had a history with you. Because if someone wanted to destabilize this house, he was the perfect doorway. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. So, the children, the tests, that's the part I'm not ready to answer. His voice was low, conflicted. Not without proof. But you believe someone else tampered with the results. He exhaled. I believe someone wants me doubting everything I love, and they're succeeding. I stepped closer. Then let me help. He looked at me for a long, weighted moment. Not cold, not distant, just exhausted from fighting an invisible enemy. I'm not used to being one step behind, he murmured. I reached for his hand, and this time he didn't pull away. His fingers curled around mine, slow but deliberate, grounding himself. That one small gesture felt more intimate than any embrace. A knock sounded again, softer this time. One of his men stepped forward. "Sir, we checked the docks. No signs of struggle, no surveillance. Whoever planned this knew how to avoid cameras." Adrian nodded. "Anything else?" "Yes," the man hesitated before continuing. "There was a cargo ship departing an hour before we arrived. No passenger lists, but we traced a payment linked to it." Adrian narrowed his eyes. "Linked how?" "The payment was made under a fake name, but the bank account it came from has ties to a charity front." My stomach dropped. I recognized the shift in Adrian's posture immediately, his shoulders tightening, eyes narrowing, breath steadying. It was the posture he took when he saw a threat he had once underestimated. "What charity?" Adrian asked. The man spoke carefully. "One belonging to Matteo Esposito." Silence hit like thunder. I froze. That name, I had heard it before, not from Adrian directly. He never talked about rivalries, but from whispers among his associates. Matteo wasn't a loud enemy. He wasn't reckless. He was calculated, quiet, patient, the kind of man who played long games. A shadow crossed Adrian's face, darker than anything I had seen before. "Of course," he whispered. I felt my pulse spike. "Adrian, who is he?" He turned to me slowly. "A man who believes everything I have should have belonged to him. A man who's been waiting for years to strike at the one place I never fortified." "Family," I whispered. Adrian nodded. The man in the doorway cleared his throat. "Sir, what do you want us to do next?" He didn't look away from me as he answered. "Protect them, and pull every record connected to Esposito. Charities, shell companies, movements, calls. I want a full analysis within the hour." "Yes, sir." The door closed behind him. Adrian let out a slow breath, rubbing the back of his neck. Matteo doesn't just attack. He erodes. He weakens. He waits for fractures. "And now he's using ours," I said. He nodded grimly. He knew exactly where to hit. The thought made me nauseous. But why use Daniel? He studied me. "Because you trusted him once, even slightly. That alone made him a vulnerability in Matteo's eyes." I closed my eyes, guilt burning through me. "This is my fault." His voice was immediate and firm. "No. He chose this timing, not you." I opened my eyes again. Adrian's expression was softer now. Not gentle exactly, but grounded. "Adrian, I don't blame you. I don't know what the truth is yet, but I know this isn't your doing." I felt tears sting behind my eyes, tears I refused to shed. What if the kids...
I started, but my voice broke. He stepped close enough that his presence wrapped around me like a protective barrier. "Don't," he whispered. "Not until we have proof. Not until I say so." He said it with such certainty, I almost believed him. A buzz suddenly vibrated against the table, his phone. He picked it up, glanced at the screen, and his whole demeanor shifted into something razor sharp. "It's Daniel's brother," he said. "He's calling." My heart leapt. "Answer it." He did. "Speak," Adrian said, voice calm but commanding. I moved closer, listening. A man's shaking voice came through the line. "Sir, it's Leo. I don't know what to do." "Where is he?" Adrian asked. "I don't know," Leo cried. "I swear I haven't seen him. He left me a voicemail this morning. I just heard it an hour ago." "Play it," Adrian said. There was rustling, shaky breathing, and then Daniel's voice filled the room. Low, breathless, panicked. "Leo, listen, if anything happens to me, tell Elena. Tell her I never wanted to hurt anyone. Tell her I tried to fix it, but I made everything worse. They're watching me. I can't go home. I can't go to him. They'll kill me if I talk and kill me if I don't. I didn't do it, Leo. I swear. The kids, it wasn't supposed to be like this. I didn't touch anything. I didn't—" His voice broke. "I'm sorry." The recording ended. My pulse hammered so hard I felt dizzy. Adrian stared at the phone like it held the last piece of a puzzle he wasn't ready to complete. "Where was he when he sent this?" he asked. Leo sniffed. "He didn't say, but I think he was running from someone. He sounded terrified." Adrian's voice sharpened. "Leo, has anyone contacted you? Anyone suspicious?" A long pause. Then, "Someone was outside my building earlier. He was just standing there, watching. He didn't move until I closed the blinds." Adrian's eyes darkened. "Leave the apartment now. One of my men will pick you up in 10 minutes. Don't pack anything. Don't go near the windows." "Yes, sir." Adrian hung up. The room fell into heavy silence. "Adrian, this is bigger than we thought." He nodded slowly. "Mateo doesn't just want to hurt me. He wants to dismantle me. And the kids—" He stepped close, voice low but firm. "I will protect them with my life. Nothing touches them. Nothing." I breathed in, slowly, shakily. "What do we do now?" He looked at me then, a look that was part strategy, part vulnerability, part something else entirely. "Now," he said quietly, "we find out exactly what Mateo did and why." He brushed his thumb over the folded note in his hand. "And then," he whispered, "we end this." A chill ran down my spine, because for the first time since the truth broke, Adrian was not just a wounded husband. He was a man preparing for war.
The house felt too quiet, like the kind of silence that comes before storm finally makes landfall. Adrian paced once, slow and deliberate, then stopped at the center of the room. His breathing was steady, but I could see the tension in the way his fingers curled and uncurled at his sides. He had never looked more like himself, controlled, calculating, dangerous in a quiet, dignified way. The kind of danger that didn't need to be loud to change everything around it. He lifted Daniel's cracked phone again, studying it the way someone studies a confession written in code. If Mateo orchestrated this, he said, then Daniel was never the target. He was a pawn, a distraction. "And we were the real target," I whispered. He looked at me, eyes softened by something I couldn't name. "You, the kids." "Yes." My throat tightened.
Then what now? What does Mateo want you to do? He slipped the phone into his pocket. Lose control, doubt myself, destroy my own house from the inside. My pulse trembled. Are you? He stared at me for a long moment. No. But I almost did. Something inside me cracked, the kind of cracking that comes when guilt merges with relief. Adrian, I should have told you about my past with Daniel. I was afraid you'd see me differently. I don't, he said. Not anymore. Whatever happened before us, it happened before us. I swallowed. And now? He hesitated, his gaze moving over my face, searching, grounding. Now, I'm fighting to keep what's mine. And that includes you. A breath escaped me shakily. Before I could speak, his phone vibrated again. He checked the message, and I watched his expression tighten. They found something, he said. We need to go. We? I asked. Yes. He grabbed his coat. I want you to see this with me. If I'm wrong, you need to know. If I'm right, you need to know that too. My heartbeat spiked, but I followed. Minutes later, we were in the car, city lights sliding across the windows like streaks of gold and blue. Adrian didn't speak. His focus was razor sharp, yet somehow calmer than before, like the chaos had clarified something inside him. The car slowed as we approached a warehouse by the river. 2 of his men stood at the entrance. One approached Adrian's door immediately. Sir, you'll want to see this. Adrian's hand found mine briefly, anchoring me before he let go and stepped inside. The warehouse was dim, lit only by a few overhead lamps casting long shadows. On a metal table near the center lay a folder and a small black drive. Adrian approached slowly. What is it? I asked. The man answered. The charity linked to Mateo. We traced the bank payments. The money trail leads to a private lab, one involved in confidential testing. My breath stilled. Adrian's eyes sharpened. A lab? Yes, sir, the man said. A lab that processes DNA samples for private clients. Adrian's jaw clenched. Show me. The man handed him the folder. He opened it. Inside were printouts, financial logs, timestamps, and a final record that made my stomach twist. A transfer. 3 days ago. Paid to the technician who handled our DNA test. My lips parted. Adrian, this means... Yes, he whispered. The test was tampered with. I exhaled shakily, a sound somewhere between relief and disbelief. He turned toward me, holding the paper up, as if seeing the truth written on it gave him the strength to breathe again. You didn't betray me, he said, and the children. A tremor broke through his control. He pressed his jaw once, steadying himself. The children are mine. I covered my mouth, a sob catching in my throat. Adrian stepped forward, pulling me into him. It wasn't a dramatic embrace, just his hands sliding around my waist, his forehead lowering to mine, his breath warm and uneven. Adrian, I'm sorry. I should have trusted deeper. I should have... No, I said, voice breaking. No, you were hurting. Anyone would have broken under what you saw. But I'm not anyone. I'm your husband, and I let someone rearrange the truth in front of me. He drew in a long breath and rested a hand against my cheek. They wanted to break me. They wanted to make me destroy the things I love. And you didn't, I whispered. You didn't. He closed his eyes briefly, grounding himself. One of his men spoke, Sir, the drive contains a video. You'll want to see it. Adrian nodded, and the man plugged the drive into a nearby monitor. A grainy video appeared, security footage from a lab hallway. We watched as a man in a cap walked inside a restricted room. "That's the technician," Adrian said. Another figure entered moments later. Even from the low quality, I recognized him. Daniel. He looked anxious, pacing, holding something in his hand. Papers? A sample envelope? The technician spoke to him, gesturing sharply. Daniel shook his head, raising his hands as if refusing something. He pointed at the envelope. The technician grabbed it from him, shoved it into a bin, took another envelope from a drawer, then forced Daniel to sign a form. Daniel looked terrified. He signed. And then, a third man walked in. Tall, dark coat, face obscured. He placed a hand on the technician's shoulder. The technician froze. Daniel froze. The man in the coat took the replaced envelope and left. The footage ended. The silence afterwards was suffocating. Adrian stood still, staring at the blank screen, breath calm but shallow. Daniel wasn't guilty. He was coerced, manipulated, threatened. I looked at Adrian. His face wasn't angry. It was something far heavier. "They used him," Adrian said quietly. "They used him to get to me, and when he panicked, they made sure he disappeared." My eyes filled. "Adrian, what do we do now?" He turned slowly, eyes colder now. Not to me, but to the truth. "Now, we bring Matteo into the light." His voice changed, not loud, not frightening, but absolute. The kind of voice a man uses when he's done being prey and ready to become the hunter. He took both of my hands in his. "We get the real results. We clear Daniel's name. And then, we protect our family." Our family. Those words broke something in me, in the best way. "Adrian, I'm with you, through all of this." He nodded once. A small, grateful motion. "I know." He looked at the note again. It wasn't me, and slipped it into his pocket. "We're going home. We have nothing left to fear." But right as we turned toward the exit, the door opened. One of Adrian's men rushed in, breathless. "Sir, urgent message. He's here." Adrian's eyes narrowed. "Who?" The man swallowed. "Matteo." My heart stopped. "Where?" Adrian asked. The man pointed outside. He said, "It's time we talk like men." Adrian's face became unreadable. Calm. Deadly calm. He turned to me, brushing his fingers across my cheek with surprising tenderness. "Stay behind me," he whispered, "no matter what." My breath trembled, because outside that warehouse door, the man who tried to destroy our lives was waiting. And everything, our marriage, our truth, our future, was about to be decided in the next few minutes.